There we go.
And are you just working off of that next town hall agenda doc in Clarity?
Clarity one, yeah.
Okay.
I'll put that in the chat. Keith, you want to start off maybe with an update about the voting app?
Yeah, we're starting to I just walked the Factland crew through an end-to-end test yesterday, and went pretty well. Everybody was able to like log in and claim their tokens and delegate to all the other team members, and what we're missing now is just like proposals on discourse. And so hopefully we can do that at some point. I don't know if it's ready to go, but I guess if we get bored during this town hall, we can we can try going over that. But yeah, I just kind of been heads down on that and not really, I don't know, taking a little bit breather from DAO stuff. So you might notice I've been pretty quiet. So yeah, that's about it. I think, I mean, I think unilaterally said that we're gonna kick or punt on the NFT thing. We don't necessarily need to, but it seems like if we do that now and get a lot of interest, that I don't know, we kind of get the short end of the stick there. Well, it depends on like what happens with ETH and everything, but we wouldn't be able to like really leverage it as much in the short term as I was thinking. But it'll probably take like a long time for us to build up interest anyway, so maybe we can just go ahead and do it. But yeah, interested to discuss that at some point, but we'll leave that. I'll say that's my update.
Okay. Who's next? Crystal, maybe?
Let's see. I guess I don't have a whole lot to update. The UNC meeting that was going to happen today got bumped, and then we're going to meet for coffee because I'm going to be up there in a couple weeks, which I think will be really good. So we can have like a long discussion, and I'm actually really curious just to venture into the Web3 conversation. It'll be a lot easier to do it, I think, in person, and to really get into some issues. So I'm thinking that maybe next week, I'm going to slightly unplug around the middle of the week because it's my birthday and I like to just veg out and do nothing, eat sushi and drink wine. But I might just make a Google Doc or something, and then we can just put questions or things to research or things that I can dive into to ask her, about news deserts and, the research there at the center, and then how we can possibly collaborate with the journalism school if that avenue opens up. That's really about it. I've been doing a little bit of stuff with All for Climate DAO, and they're super interested in JournoDAO. So I really love how excited they get when we talk about JournoDAO, and they usually bring it up. So the stuff we were talking about today was really, there's just so many stories, like in the Gitcoin, in the GR14, and then in the collectives that are part of who they serve. There's so many amazing stories. It just makes me want to like deploy a team of budding journalists out into the wild and let them loose, cover all these things. So I'm excited to see where that evolves into. And it's an interesting collective too. They've got some interesting infrastructures already in place because they also do a lot of fiscal support for nonprofits. So yeah, I think that's most of it. I'm in the it's almost happy hour zone, and there's no caffeine left in my system, so we're pretty much useless at this point. So I'll pass
running on empty.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So welcome. I saw Matt just joined. So yeah, I don't know if Guy or Jennifer or Justin, if you want to. Oh, and Spencer is here now too. Spencer, we're just kind of going around and doing quick quick updates, whatever you want to update on, and optional if you don't want to, whether it's JournoDAO stuff or non-JournoDAO stuff. Whoever wants to jump in that hasn't yet.
I mean, I don't have any JournoDAO stuff, sadly. I mean, sort of JournoDAO adjacent. I haven't talked with this about you guys, but Crystal and I did about a 90-minute recording about 10 days ago, and then I spent a day and a half editing it. Pretty proud of how that ended up. It's on my podcast feed if you want to check it out. I learned a lot about Crystal. So if you want to do that, yeah. Otherwise, I'm working on this Impact DAO book thing with Deepa. Deepa rocks on Twitter. And that Gitcoin is actually kind of popping off, surprisingly. With Match, we're up to like $6,700. So, which surprised me. But yeah, that's going to be mostly, my part of that's going to be mostly editing and video stuff. But otherwise, going on a trip.
That's the same project that kind of started off as a survey that got sent around. Is that the same thing?
I'm not sure.
Oh.
I'm not sure. It was always presented to me as like a research project / book / multimedia thing. So.
Okay.
Maybe.
That's the same thing then. Okay. Very cool. And is there any place we can kind of keep tabs on that?
I mean, there's a Discord. You can check out the Gitcoin if you want. I can post those in the chat if you guys want.
Yeah, I'd be curious.
Yeah, and Deepa's pretty active on Twitter too. I'm supposed to be participating in that one, but I got like way overwhelmed this week. So I'm going to weave my way back into that. It's kind of like, Eric, what you said last week when you haven't checked into a Discord in a few days and you're like, oh my God,
Yeah.
there are 1,000 things I need to check right now. I'm just going to ignore that. We're kind of there. But I mean, they're doing an amazing job. Like there's a lot of action. And Guy, aren't you getting ready to do the interviews and selected like 10 DAOs to research?
Well, I planned ahead very effectively, where as in 18 months ago, I planned a 3-week trip to almost completely dodge all the interviews. So then I can just come back and have a bunch of editing to do in a cold, dark room by myself. So I planned it perfectly. Actually, there'll probably be interviews left to do after I get back. I don't know. We'll see. I'm sure you guys have noticed DAO stuff moves. Like you expect it to move so fast, and it moves about a third the speed of that. So that's, yeah.
Yeah, it's very fast, or there seems to be a lot of, it's weird. There's like fast, and then there's a lot of waiting involved too. I can't quite figure it out. Cool. Anyone else? Spencer, Matt, Justin, Jennifer?
I mean, I can just, my last 7 days was in Austin at Consensus. And I followed around with the youth crypto conference and camp because I wanted to see like how they were planning on building out their crypto conference, and also to see how they're gaining sponsors and so forth, and if there's like a real interest for sort of these workshops and different things. It's the money's a bit tight right now all around. In terms of sponsorship, even like the Near protocol was getting their Hacker House sponsored by a South Korean group. So I was kind of just following the money a bit and seeing like there's plenty of it around. I just think that there definitely has to be, you definitely have to find media and partners, sponsors, I think, in terms of getting projects lifted off the ground. But I didn't really dive into DAOs, so I didn't do any research around that too much. But it was high vibes and a lot of NFT launches with parties. So, as per usual in Austin. And yeah, it was a very successful conference. That's all I've got. I'm catching up on the Discord, and I see you guys have gone like down some rabbit holes, and so yeah, I'm interested to hear today like what's happening and if there's a way I can contribute. No other leads right now, The San Francisco one is a bit cold. I think the market also has something to do with that. But yeah.
Before we get off,
Hmm?
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say the only kind of connection since the last town hall we had was Alona connected me with someone who's chief of staff for commissioners in Texas and said that he lobbied the first DAO bill for Governor Abbott in Texas, and he's interested in, I guess, DAO operations. And so we got to talking, and he also said he's in a working group with the dean of blockchain and quantum computing at the University of Texas. And I dropped in that we were in talks with building, Web3 curriculum and doing our workshops that may, feed into that kind of like an information repository. We're talking with CityDAO about this. So I shared with him the Web3 journalism NFT writing minting session that we did, and so that may be a good connection at some point. But just today, so I don't know what's going to become of this.
I feel like you need to give some kind of an update on like the CB radios and the various other communication devices in the background.
Oh yeah, I'm actually I just got to Boston. That's why I was late. I'm staying in a boat.
Oh, nice.
I'm staying with my dad and my godfather. I actually have this thing here too. I'm in the
That's perfect.
Let's go.
Fun.
Before we move off the topic of sponsorship, what exactly would you be looking for in a sponsor?
Sorry, you mean like what I mean in terms of like the
Yeah, would it be like monetary support or like community involvement or?
Oh, the youth crypto conference, they were particularly looking for obviously money sponsors, so that they can, and then media. There are several partnerships they were looking at, and they have Sarson Funds, which is a marketing team that's also sponsoring them. It's just to kind of get this youth crypto conference alive and a thing. But I mean, I wanted to see what the content was going to be like because it was all around financial literacy, and I'm like, I don't know. I just was looking at, is there a place for teaching young people, journalism or a curriculum for it in these places? And of course there is, but yeah, it wasn't my. I'm not leading the DAO or leading the team. I was just seeing how it's working, and going into the planning meetings. So yeah, I think it's right. I think money is a big thing. So, but yeah.
Okay, yeah, we're looking to a little background. I'm building a company called Focher, and it's just like a platform for decentralized news. And we are looking to like sponsor different communities and just like get involved. So if you want to connect offline about that, I'd be more than happy to chat.
But I think that could really tie nicely with JournoDAO and like the possibility of with youth as well, because like it's I just looked at your project, and it just looks like it would be really youth friendly.
Absolutely.
I also just shared a link in the chat section for the collection of active Gitcoin grants that the LexDAO guy is building. So that has the ones that I listed in the Discord channel. So this is something that, like, in principle, we'd get all the DAOs that are involved in this to kind of cross promote each other by sharing this collection. We could get a little bit more exposure to everyone involved.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant idea that I'm shocked we hadn't thought of in the last like 3 months that we've been talking about Gitcoin stuff. That's smart. Thank you, Spencer.
Yeah, I'm glad it was this other guy's idea from LexDAO. I was like, yeah, it kind of seems obvious in hindsight. Yeah.
Looks like Justin says his update is he was learning about implementing commitment schemes. They're fairly useful for fair voting on chain. So maybe looking into some of the fact checking things are already aware. Okay, cool. So that kind of ties in a little bit. I guess yeah, I've been kind of like you, Keith. I've been a little bit off of DAOs for the last week or so, just with like the COVID stuff, and then going to Denver um, for the Heterodox Academy conference. That was not really what I was envisioning, just mainly because it was like 90% social scientists, professors, and then like a very, very small amount of media. And then even the media that was there was mostly like opinion journalists and columnists. There was one woman wandering around in a Bitcoin country t-shirt that I got to talk to a little bit. She was not super into Web3 or Ethereum. Just hardcore Bitcoin maxi wandering around with all the academics. What I was going to say is, I had some backline business cards that I was passing out to anyone that would listen, and everyone seemed pretty intrigued by it, actually, and it's also easier to explain than some of the other things that we're working on, including like what a DAO is. So a few people said that they'll be in touch, so maybe they will. We'll see.
Cool.
So other than that, there wasn't a ton of tie into JournoDAO stuff there. Other than it made me feel good about being involved in this, because I would say the overall atmosphere among this crowd was not particularly it was kind of weird, because like the individual people I met were all very cool. I met a guy who runs like the happiness and forgiveness projects at Stanford, and he was super fascinating. So all the individual people were very, very cool. I did interview the podcaster that I mentioned last week for about a half hour. She totally got Factland, by the way. And we also discussed a little bit, some of the on-chain investigation stuff that we're kind of starting up, and that seemed to resonate. And I have some follow-up to do with Jonathan Haidt, who I spoke to for like 5 seconds, because he's just getting mobbed by people the entire time. But so yeah, that's kind of it for that. That's where I've been the last 3 days. It was like so much. So like I said, 90% of the sessions were actually like kind of philosophical discussions that really had no relevance at all. And so I actually just like left early at one point and went and saw a terrible David Cronenberg movie by myself. I did the first time by myself, seeing a movie by myself. I'd never done that before. So yeah.
Crimes of the Future.
Yeah.
I saw that too. Yeah.
What'd you think?
I'm a big Cronenberg guy, so I love all that stuff. I really like this one.
Okay. It was. Yeah. I think it'd be interesting if I was into that. Like the points he was trying to make were really cool, but I was a little distracted by his style, I guess, that I didn't quite realize I was walking into. So yeah, anyway. So some other like I guess more on topic updates from the last week. Coming up here in a couple hours is the Diamond DAO town hall, and Crystal and Nick, who's made appearances on this town hall before, the three of us, and maybe Keith was in there as well. We put together a proposal to basically use Diamond DAO's on-chain data analysis and visualization platform to do to kind of like basically beta test it and to use it to produce basically at least one piece of investigative journalism using their like on-chain analysis and visualization stuff. And so yeah, that proposal is in, and I think maybe we'll be talking about it on the town hall. They specifically invited us to come at 5 o'clock, and we have a channel in their a private channel in their Discord for discussing stuff. So we'll see where that goes. Pretty excited about that. Crystal and Nick and I have been jamming on it a little bit, and so you know, if it's approved, we'll be starting pretty much immediately. And like, even if it's not approved, I think, you know, Nick is already doing this work, and I think Chris and I both are kind of interested in going after it. So that's kind of exciting to see where that goes. And let's see. Other than that, totally lost track of the screen. What else did I have on my list there? Anyone that's got the clarity open? I'm a mess, man. I cannot keep anything.
You've got Decent, Edgeware, and Kabocha.
Oh, right. So I don't know if anyone. So Rich from. Oh, the other thing. So the Online News Association conference let's do this first. So the Online News Association is an organization mainly made up of newsrooms around the country, I think internationally. And then they told us that there's a lot more freelance activity going on there. But you know, it's basically reporters from around the country, and you know, typically more local focused historically. So really kind of up our alley in terms of like the local journalism thing. And they have a program for startups where for a very deeply discounted fee, you can basically become a sponsor of the conference, and you get a slot at their startup alley that includes like a 1-hour presentation spot. And then there's also like a whole bunch of virtual presentation real estate that comes with it. And it seemed Keith and I were on a call with their sponsorship and content person, and it seemed like a really good opportunity to basically just reach out to up to 1,500 reporters, it sounds like, from around the country and around the world, and just kind of, you know, spread the gospel of Web3 and maybe make some connections, and also answer a lot of questions about Web3, maybe dispel some myths. And so we're supposed to find out if that application is officially approved actually today. And so that would be at their conference that's in Los Angeles in late September. I want to say it was like September 20th to the 22nd. And
21st to the 24th.
Okay, thank you. 21st to the 24th. And so I think that's potentially exciting. And another thing that I thought might be worth discussing is whether we would want to try to perhaps organize our first JournoDAO meetup alongside that in Los Angeles. And that, you know, whether that could be just 5 or 6 of us, or maybe we could discuss you know, renting out a space for like more of like a mixer or something. So I don't know. That's any thoughts on that real quick?
I mean, I'm in LA, so I'd be able to come to that and maybe help organize it. I've never organized something like this, but maybe I can help.
How long does it take to sail to LA from Boston?
I don't know. We'd have to go rogue with this. It's a boat that's an Airbnb as well. So steal it.
I mean, I'm in LA, so I absolutely obviously I like the idea, but I think it'd be cool to do like a little bit more of a meetup and do like a learning experience, and then a happy hour or something, like where we're actually getting into groups, and like there's a format that works really well, or something kind of like where we actually interact a little bit more around the things and learn, and that would be very useful. I could help organize that.
I can probably make it out there. I have to wait and see what my school schedule looks like, make sure there's no exams. But getting from Denver to LA should be pretty cheap. on my student budget. So tentative, yes.
Yeah, I'd like to go too. Probably fly.
I'd like to say it's impressive that you managed to dodge Portland somehow, Eric, with this thing.
Oh, I figured I was going to like inevitably have to road trip up there afterwards or something. The pure gravity of the black hole of Portland would pull me up there. I joke mostly. So yeah, apparently, and this also kind of shocked me, but so the speaking slot, the presentation slot that would come with this, if it works out, is a full hour, which is a lot, I thought. And so, I was kind of sure to make sure that it would be set up to do some Q&A there, which I got to imagine there would be a lot of questions from, it's a crowd mostly of reporters. So that's usually makes for some pretty lively Q&A, particularly around a controversial topic like NFTs and stuff. So I guess my thought was, we do a Q&A in the presentation, and then, we could conclude the Q&A by saying we can, continue this at our event tomorrow at such and such place if we wanted to go that route and actually rent out a bar and do like a proper mixer, or maybe like a place that has, like you were saying, Jennifer, a place that has like a small stage where we could, kind of continue the Q&A or something, some kind of educational presentations. Sky's the one that I guess.
What was the date again? Just so I have that.
21st through the 24th, right, Crystal? And so
June?
yeah,
July.
Sorry, September.
Oh, sorry. I just missed that. I missed the month. Okay.
So hopefully we would have more information on exactly, I think they said they get the schedule locked in like the first week of August. So if we don't know what day we would be presenting sooner, I think we would definitely know by then. So yeah, I'll keep everyone filled in on that as I get more information. But in speaking with the ONA representative, I was I don't know if you had any thoughts you want to share about it, Keith, but it seemed like a pretty good fit actually. And the person we spoke with from the Online News Association, she told me that she personally was excited to see it, that they had some other kind of like Web3 type startups that were interested in presenting at the conference, but none that were using Web3 anywhere near in the way that we were proposing. So that seemed like positive feedback.
Yeah, it was just interesting to think about that far in advance with JournoDAO in September, and like trying to envision what sort of climate like there will be around crypto and Web3, like if it's nobody's talking about it anymore, or there's some other huge like hack or rug pull that we're going to have to like address during our presentation or whatever, which would actually make it more fun probably. But I was also thinking maybe since an hour is so long, and if we don't feel like the Q&A can really fill up that time, we could maybe put together some sort of like panel and like a guided discussion or something. I don't know if maybe people could think of potential guests that we could have like on a panel, or might use that opportunity to bring in, I don't know, somebody that we'd be eager to talk to that might bridge the two worlds.
And if the diamond thing goes forward, then that would actually be great to do a demo of the investigative tools that we used for that, assuming that moves forward. That would take a good chunk of time too.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that would give a lot of that might help steer the potential conversation that would happen in the Q&A if you show what's possible with the blockchain itself as part of the conversation. Then that will kind of tamp down any of the potential like crazy questions that we might get.
Yeah, it might be worth bringing up to DiamondDAO as well, because that would probably be, that makes the proposal more interesting, I think, if we're going to announce, like, go over the results publicly, like at a pretty good event like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't even made that connection. I'll try to. Well, I don't want to. Maybe I'll hear in the next 2 hours whether or not we've been approved before bringing it up in their town hall. But I think that's a good point.
Well, even if it's not approved, there's still the potential for more. Like, each of us is having these conversations with these professional journalism institutions, like conversations with the UNC and then conversations with what Spencer's talking about in Texas. So that just puts that data aggregate tool in front of all of these different types of populations. So sweeten that pot there.
True. So then kind of the last thing on my list, and that is, and I think Crystal and Keith and maybe some other folks were on this DM with Rich from Descent Partners, which is a part of Edgeware, which I think operates on Polkadot, and it has also launched the Kaboka DAO, and it's this whole other ecosystem that I know very little about, but as far as I understand, like, Kaboka uses Edgeware, which is the protocol, but they want to use Kaboka kind of in like a way to build sort of like public goods type stuff. And Descent is a DAO that also funds stuff. And I've been going through all this stuff to try to understand all of it, and it's all built off of Polkadot. And anyway, Rich is from Descent Partners, which is kind of like, I think, like kind of their grant making arm, or like new project stewardship arm. And we had been connected to him through the reporter at CoinDesk, and then kind of sent him all of our stuff, and in particular Keith's essay on local journalists as validators, and that really resonated with him. And so we have a call with him. I believe he's in the UK on Friday, where he says he has an idea for how he thinks that JournoDAO could work within this ecosystem, and it seemed to involve creating some like a parachain through Kusama, which is part of Polkadot. Does anyone understand what I'm talking about? Because I don't fully understand it.
Yeah.
Okay, Justin, can you tell me what I just said?
Yeah. So small distinction, like Edgeware it doesn't matter too much. Like what the distinction here, but Edgeware built on some of the tech that Polkadot, the stewards of Polkadot created. This tech is for building L1s. It's called Substrate. I don't know too much about Kaboka. Like, I've heard the name, I know what Edgeware does. And so Edgeware kind of tried to spin off and do like their own ecosystem. So it's kind of like this, almost like a spin-off of like the Polkadot ecosystem. Decent, I don't know those guys, but yeah, I mean, building your own parachain, depending on what you want to do, if it's focused on the DAO aspect or publishing or like some checking process, you'll have really powerful tools in order to do all of those kind of natively at the chain level. And that's kind of why they build that tech.
What is a parachain?
I need a diagram.
Uh-oh.
So
Somebody diagrammed this for me once at East Denver, and it's basically why Polkadot exists, right? Like Polkadot is kind of like a chain of chains. Is that right?
you got it. Yeah. So they I'll try to explain it as quickly as I can. They're trying to tackle the interoperability. They're trying to tackle interoperability challenges and solve problems with blockchain scaling. So number one is application specific blockchains, like to give like a closer to home hitting example, just because people usually kind of start with the technicals but maybe you heard like the Bored Apes guys were like, oh, there's a lot of traffic there's a lot of throughput, there's a lot of traffic going on Ethereum. We're going to build our own chain. By default, if they have their own chain, all of their Bored Apes traffic will never be hit by other users of Ethereum. Other users of Ethereum will never be hit by Bored Apes traffic. So that's like a use case for an application specific blockchain. So parachain is that, but you also get interoperability with other chains who have decided to build in the same way without bridges. So everybody who's connected to Polkadot gets all these connections to these other chains. You don't have to worry about building a bridge or the security or resources involved. And interoperability is a bit advanced in that you can send arbitrary data across chains. So you're not just sending tokens or NFTs. You can send different pieces of data. You can send instructions to other chains, code. I'll stop there. Let me know how it sounds.
No, that was good. So is para like a word that means it's the Polkadot ecosystem, or is there some like generalized, like, is that short for something?
Parallel, I think, right? Short for parallel.
Okay.
I think you got it, Eric. I think they were just trying to use it just generally as like how you might use it as a prefix.
Okay, but if you're saying parachain, you're talking about the Polkadot ecosystem right now.
I think it is specifically Polkadot, but I could be wrong. Like I don't know if the term is used anywhere else.
You're right. I don't think it's used anywhere else. I was talking about the naming, but yeah, I think if you say parachain, that's all it means right now.
Is it like a similar problem that Cosmos is trying to solve with their IBC or whatever?
Yep, similar. I think the bridging versus not bridging approach is one of the main distinctions. There's a few others, but we don't have to go into it.
Cool. That's super helpful for me.
Something that is really appealing about this that I was able to actually grok through like kind of my reading and research on this is that Edgeware seems to be among the most like truly decentralized chains in this ecosystem. And like when I think it's been around 2 or 3 years, and when they did their token drop, they did something called a lock drop, where so it was an airdrop, but they made it difficult to nearly impossible to pump and dump the tokens. And then they also, something about the way that they did it is I think they like 90% of all tokens were lock dropped. And then there's some other rules to prevent like any kind of centralization. And I guess from what I was reading, one of the results of that is that most of the people that created it like have actually moved on. So there's like, from what I gather, the founders are like there. And so it really is kind of completely run and stewarded by the people that got the tokens in this lock drop. So that they talk a lot about being like more purely decentralized than other chains and protocols, which was pretty interesting to me.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
I didn't know about that, but I did hear that some of the people on the founding side sort of dipped, and like some of them are doing other projects now, and that sort of thing.
So
Yeah,
go ahead.
Please, yeah, changing the subject.
Yeah, I was just saying in like reading their the way that they their history of things. Like, it sounds like, yeah, the founders kind of moved on to other things. And so it really was like the community was kind of left with all the value that was created through the lock drop. And so like they've really have since then have been figuring out, where to distribute their funds and where to build. And I think that's where Rich comes in, and where Decent Partners, which is, again, kind of their R&D arm, I guess. It's pretty interesting. It was interesting to dive into, because I hadn't heard of it at all until this connection was made. What were you going to say, Justin?
Back to building a parachain. If we want to go that route, I'd be very quick to raise my hand.
Cool. It sounds fascinating to me. Like I can barely visualize in my head what it would look like and how we would use it, but like just kind of reading through it, like clearly seems powerful, and I would like to learn how.
Yeah, it would be good if you have like a lot of features in mind, and you really want to build like a platform of sorts, and it's a good way to go. And especially if you're looking for like real trustless interoperability with other chains, it gives you that out of the box.
Justin, do you want to join this call with us and Rich on Friday? I think it's like Friday, I want to say like 11 a.m. Eastern.
Yeah, should be fine. Give me a quick sec.
And hopefully I'm doing that right. He's like UTC +1, so I gotta figure. But I put down 9 a.m. Mountain in my calendar. But yeah, we can follow up on that. It would be great to have you on the call.
Yep, I'm free. Let's do it.
Okay, cool. And so yeah, that's it for my update. Which that gets us to 2/3 of the way through the call, time wise. So I have a few other things to bring up that aren't super urgent, but maybe if we want to circle back to anything else, like Keith, if you want to circle back to the voting or the NFT development or anything else.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to hear people's thoughts on whether we should delay the founder NFT or if we should just go for it anyway. I've kind of changed my mind to going for it since I started talking about it, but I don't know, be curious to hear what everyone thinks.
I mean, do we go for it now and make it 2 ETH? I mean, I think we land on 1.5 ETH? Like, I don't know. I'm kind of ambivalent, honestly, because I don't see any reason. I don't feel like I can predict the future at all in terms of where the price of ETH is going to go. So like with that in mind, it kind of seems like any time's as good as the present. I mean, no time is as good as the present.
I mean, do you guys think in these conditions we'd be able to charge? I mean, it kind of sounds obvious asking it, but do you think we'd be able to charge more ETH given that it's worth less now, and then it could be a kind of investment as far as we're concerned?
That's kind of where I was coming from. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it just depends on how quickly we would want to like have like real money to do something with, like hire somebody or pay people, but then also like how long. Like, I don't think we're just going to launch it and then it sells out like right then. So, it might be dragging on for like months as far as like there's still being tokens available. So yeah, it's probably little downside and mostly upside to it. But yeah, we could keep it at 1.5 or bump it to 2. But the short-term stuff, I get now that I'm thinking about it, probably less of an issue.
Especially if you just pay people in ETH, then they can just sit on it too. You know, it's basically everybody's savings account at this point.
Was it already addressed if the amount of founders NFTs or these things would if we decide to split it up into multiple categories, if there would be a fixed supply and the mint would just be open until that fixed supply is reached, or were you thinking more like a time period where people could mint?
Yeah, I was just thinking like indefinitely until the 1,000 were minted. So I mean, we could try and generate some scarcity, but I kind of hate that when people, I think it's kind of like a move of confidence to just be like, we have 0 people asking about this right now, but we're minting this and it's available and we're just going to like make it worth something and you can hop on whenever, hop on the train.
And also if it's like this protracted kind of mint period, we could it may make it easier to have more of a tailored kind of onboarding experience for when someone does get it. If it's like it could be something with like an event or something if someone gets it, especially if it's like a high enough price. And that could be part of what you get is like this kind of maybe it doesn't need to be too personalized and like take up too much time, but it could be some part of it, I guess.
Yeah, we should definitely make a big deal out of the first person who does it, who's not us.
And if it happens to, if we do get into the LA conference, we could try to make that one of our first in-person events. So you've got that lead time going up to it. So, hey, get the NFT now because we're going to have this in-person event in LA. And
Yeah.
just a little, that could be a time incentive. That's not a scarcity incentive, but it's just a, hey, we're going to do this here. Come join us.
Totally. We could do like we'll buy all your drinks at the happy hour.
The JournoDAO treasury takes the tab.
Yeah.
One other boring thing that kind of ties into that, the Online News Association, they were looking for all kinds of details about our legal organization, which we do not have. And so we had kind of a little meta conversation going on about where and how to incorporate, and there seems to be a battle going on right now over whether or not it would be better to incorporate in Delaware or Wyoming. And I don't know anything about the legal or financial or tax advantages of either of those. I kind of like the idea of actually, having a shingle somewhere in Wyoming, just because we could feasibly, be doing some work on the ground or have some project or a partner there at some point in the not too distant future. Whereas that doesn't seem nearly as likely in Delaware, but that's almost more of a just like an emotional argument for doing one over the other. Any other thoughts, or does anyone know anything about the advantages of one versus the other?
I know that if you're ever planning on raising like venture capital, Delaware is almost required. But other than that, I don't know much. I've looked a little bit into the Wyoming DAO structure, and I think that's like increasingly reputable. But that's just my 2 cents on that.
We'd actually just, at this point, it would just be forming an LLC in Wyoming.
Yeah, that's what I've heard about the Wyoming DAO thing. It's just like it's a genre of LLCs.
Yeah, I just had my personal experience with the LLCs that I had in Wyoming. And they were just tiny little, solopreneur businesses. So I don't have, I did research it at the time. It was 2014 into 2015. There were a lot of similarities between Delaware and Wyoming to the point where I was like, oh, let me just do Wyoming because it has mountains in it, So it's really kind of why I went that way. And
That's kind of how I make business decisions too.
Yeah, I mean, there's no logic. Don't look at me for logic. I make completely emotional decisions for the most part when it comes down to it. After I research, then I'm like, okay, this is shiny. And I really like the little office of the one that I put in our Discord. Like it's in an old, basically they have their virtual office is in this old printing building from like 1910. Again, total emotional decisions. And it used to also be the printing where they did the newspaper for Sheridan, Wyoming. So it's just kind of adorable. But yeah, I mean, I didn't know if we're doing VC, if we end up doing VC rounds or anything like that, then yeah, Wyoming might not be the best option. So.
And what do people think about that question? That's actually a pretty important question.
Yeah,
The
and
VC question.
I'm not sure if this is a sound way of thinking, but maybe because we're in this kind of a legal regulatory vacuum right now, and we know that a certain fundraising approach isn't amenable under a certain entity form, could we just do it before we form that entity?
Wait, what do you mean?
Like if there's a certain fundraising thing, like if a certain kind of token sale isn't allowed under a certain entity form, would we just do the token sale first, and then like
So,
ask,
So like
I
wait.
guess like a
and see.
forgiveness permission kind of thing.
Yeah. So
And I
like
don't even know if this applies to the ones that we're considering.
right. So I guess I think we're at the point where there has to be a legal. I mean, either everything's going to run through like one of our checking accounts at some point very soon, or it's going, or we need a like an LLC just so it's not that extreme level of centralization. Just for like the idea of like renting a place in LA, like that's going to have a name on it, a business name preferably. So like I think we're kind of at the stage now of just forming something legal that can pay a bill. And but I do think that it's like we could form the thing, like in Wyoming, I think pretty easily, and it sounds like very cheaply. And then like what you're saying, Spencer, if like down the road, the time comes for venture capital, which I have strong feelings about at the moment, but if the time came for that, then I guess we could do what you're saying and then go to form something in Delaware for those purposes.
Yeah, I think it's the scope of the LLC that we're talking about is really just like a tool for the DAO to use. It doesn't like encompass the entire concept of the DAO. It's just something that we can like use for things that require like real world presence, and then just so that none of us go bankrupt if like there's some black swan event. And yeah, I'd proposed Stripe Atlas just because like the whole thing gives me a lot of anxiety and they make it easy or whatever. But if Crystal, your emotional decision sounds awesome too, I would jump on that bandwagon, and it's cheaper. So I would just say if it's up to me, I would just do Stripe Atlas so that I could get it done. But if you have somebody in Wyoming who can just do it, then like I think we should go that route.
I did it like I said, I did it in 2014, 2015, and it was pretty hands off. Then I did a second one like 3 years later, and I basically just sent them a few things and they took care of it. Now I never gave that to a lawyer and had them look through things. So, again, emotional decisions, but yeah, I mean, it was so easy. And at the time, I don't think you can do it now, but at the time, one of the services I used originally, and that's not the one that I recommended, but they actually would go physically walk down to the local bank. So I had a bank in Jackson Hole. I was like, again, mountains, so I had a bank in Jackson Hole, and then they set up the bank account for me. And then I got on the phone with the bankers and, proved that I'm a human. But I think they nipped that in the bud after the Panama Papers. They were like, yeah, no more of that. So yeah, but it was really easy and cheap, and they're very human. Like the link that I sent, I mean, there was nothing scammy about it. They were like, we like to farm, we like to sit in the sunshine. We just do this because we want to help you do your business. Like we just are riding our bikes around town. I was like, okay, those are my people. So
Cool. Okay, well, maybe let's just we can just kind of continue down the road, and I did pull up the Stripe thing and started looking at it, and we can maybe we can do a little compare and contrast in the Discord or on Discourse or something, and just kind of try to make a decision on one of those.
Yeah, I guess where Stripe would, now that I'm thinking about it, where it might have the advantages, it's like it's a account that, you know, multiple people could log into versus like that could, and that login could be shared. Whereas like, I don't know, these people in Wyoming would be bombarded with us calling them on the phone, or like, I don't know, it seems a little bit more clean and like automated to have like the web portal. And then you do get the added bonus of Stripe kind of like adding stuff, like anything you want to do after the LLC, like I don't know, like there's a certain number that I needed to get as like as an Apple developer, that like you have to form an LLC to get, and then, you know, Stripe makes that easier. It's just sort of like these little things that might be worth it. But sorry, just thinking out loud here. I'm gonna look in their portal and see all the stuff that they offer.
yeah, that's definitely going to be more robust than the other one. The service that I use, they finally made a dashboard, but I used to have to like call them like to bill me every month. And I was like, guys, come on. But they did eventually get a dashboard, but nothing like, you know, this is pretty cool. So nothing this robust.
All right, well, to be continued, I suppose. Anything else pressing, or do we want to open up a whole conversation on the pros and cons of venture capital? Or not?
Just the cons.
Well, I mean, the pros have always been more straightforward.
Yeah, I can't really see a world that we need it or want it, but you know, it is a DAO. So who knows? And then it doesn't seem like seems like there's the DAO, and then you can have like a nonprofit, you know, that's associated with DAO. You can have an LLC or B Corp or whatever it is that you want to do. It seems like we're not really limited. If the DAO votes that we can, or we should do VC funding, I think we could spin up an entity to like make that happen.
Right. Yeah. It's not like any decision made now is necessarily actually limiting. There's always avenues to open things up in the future. Sorry.
I was just going to ask what your thoughts are on VC funding.
Me?
Seems like you wanted to say something.
Well, you kind of already said it. I mean, it does feel like it runs counter to kind of, I think, the ethos and the goals of, you know, trying to get that, you know, need for exponential growth out of the business of particularly local journalism. You know, it seems like that's part of what destroyed it. So, but I would be actually kind of eager to hear counterpoints to that line of thought.
As someone who's going through the venture capital route right now, I think that is a strong point, because like if you go to a venture capitalist, they're looking for a return, and so they're going to ask about like, what's your profitability model, and are they going to get like 100x ROI on their investment in you. Also, if you do plan on launching a token, they would be like less apt to get in on that, just because like they would have less control, and then like their ownership would have to compete with the ownership of the community.
Right. That's something I hadn't even considered, but I mean, for like, all the talk of decentralization, it ultimately is a force in the opposite direction, it feels like. But yeah, that's just where my mind is right now. Being a little bit, and it's easy to be more idealistic when you're like still kind of at the idea stage that we're at. So
And I think too that we might find that somebody comes into the group and wants to make an app that's specific to a need that a journalist would have, or media outlet would have. Then when you're spinning up an app, a VC is a more logical conversation. So then that could, like you said, be branched off into its own LLC or its own entity, and then the VC in that aspect would be logical, but not as a more of just a community that's coming together to do decentralized journalism.
yeah, I think it's when the VC influence comes, like you're saying, it makes sense for tools, for like building tools. It makes a certain amount of sense, but when you have that growth mandate coming more in touch with the editorial process, I think is where it gets icky and problematic. Yeah, I guess that's all I have to say about it.
I mean, how would you pitch like to a VC that wants to make money and that's their whole mandate? Like how would you pitch JournoDAO to them? You know what I mean? Like, I just don't, I'm
I
not
probably
seeing it.
wouldn't. I probably wouldn't, because I don't know how much money JournoDAO is going to make. I mean, it's not really why I'm here. I mean, I do think the possibility is there, but it's not the North Star. I don't know. Does anyone else have any? Did I just like totally burst everyone's bubble?
I think it would be you would send them to purchase tokens, and then just make sure that the voting mechanism within the DAO doesn't give the person with more tokens more voting power. So say, hey, this VC wants to come in and support this mission. It would be an altruistic move for them. And okay, here's the tokens, or here's, depending on how we structure it, here's 10 media outlets that need support. You don't get extra voting power for donating this money, but you do get to show that you have X amount of tokens in your wallet that are connected with this DAO. Does that make sense?
I have seen, I don't know if y'all are familiar with like SAFE agreements, like a simple agreement for future equity. There's also like a SAFT agreement, like SAFE agreement, a simple agreement for future tokens. So if it's not VC, you could kind of focus on like angel investing, just like wealthy people who want to support. And so like, hey, like we plan on launching a token, and when we do, we can like sign for like for this investment. You would get like 10%. Like if we issue 10 million tokens and they're going to like vest over time, like you would start out getting 1 million of those, and then like no option to buy more. And so they would have like a heavy vote, but not like a 51% sway. Just another option there.
I think it would be cool too to focus more on, if we're going to focus on getting large sums of money from entities, more the grant route, which does require that legal structure again, but like more from the Knight Foundation, at least in part, because that's going to give a lot more exposure to our industry, into the journalism industry. If we have funding from like Knight or from some other, Pointer or whoever, I think that would make more sense to focus on those resources rather than one individual, like a Jeff Bezos coming in and giving us a bunch of money for something.
Yeah, it's kind of like signing with a record label or something. Like you want to sign like where like the other bands are kind of like in the same genre, and their fan bases will be interested to hear about you and your music. So yeah, I think that makes sense.
And I do actually know that this is probably going to be part of the conversation with Rich and Decent and Edgeware, because that's a question that's come up is, what is kind of the model for, returning, what is JournoDAO's model for returning value to the community, to a token, to whatever it is. And I don't totally have an answer right now. I have like an idea of how I think it's possible to basically set up a parallel economy that is like local community based around a token, but that has probably not really been achieved or successfully implemented anywhere in the real world yet. I mean, that's like kind of like my long-term pie in the sky dream, but to even get to the point where you can start implementing that experiment, like the route to building that out probably goes through all of these sources, whether it's grants or basically doing contracts for services like we're essentially doing with Diamond DAO. Like it's kind of all of the above. The VC one still makes me nervous though, because of the extra kind of the extra elements of kind of pressure that adds.
Yeah, I'd say like sources of revenue might be the founder NFT and like our plan to generate value around that with like education and events and all that. But then also like on the incubator side, like if we are kind of launching these or helping to launch these other businesses, like I don't know, like Factland or D Ranch or whatever, then we might get some sort, or the DAO might get some sort of stake in like those,
like the seed club model, basically.
Yeah, and so like we grow like with them if that's the arrangement, or it might be some of the infrastructure that we're talking about, where like journalists who use something that we built pay like a small toll, like to use it just to like keep the lights on or something. But that's the whole thing, is like it's not, if we try and put the VC's ideas about like how much that should generate on any of these things, it just seems like if it doesn't break them, it will definitely like mutate them into stuff that like we probably right now would not be that excited about, and since we've already gotten this far with just like passion and our dedication to like this vision, I'm not even like feeling like, oh, if we only had like millions of dollars and we could light it on fire in all these interesting ways. But yeah, so to me it's like not that much upside. But if somebody is questioning about like if we're going to be profitable and have a business and generate revenue and stuff, like I think that's going to happen. It has to happen, because that's how you make things sustainable, I think, is like we are generating money to pay people to do this, and if we're not, then everyone's going to burn out. So
that is a good question. Like how much would you be looking to raise, and like what would be the use of the money?
I mean, I think short term, it would like, so I mean, we put in for a grant application to the FTX Future Fund a few months back, Matt, and like for that, we basically put in one of the main expenses was to get a Web3 journalism incubator like up and running. So the primary project there was the incubator that Keith was talking about, and then also doing some like kind of content and operational stuff as well.
Just for the some like numbers to look at, a venture we seem to be going away from venture capital, and I think that does make sense. But check sizes for venture capital usually start at like 250,000, and then for like an angel investor, it would start at like 50,000. And there's a lot less due diligence in that route, and it's usually just like a wealthy person who cares about what you're doing rather than like a firm that's trying to get a return. So might be a more sensible route.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think up to this point that, we're still kind of, and it's kind of crystallizing, I think, that, figuring out what we're actually pitching. I mean, because the pitch really is kind of, a vision. And then, just in the last few months, I think we've kind of started to hone in on, some things that we can actually do, and services that we can actually offer, that, can help realize that vision while being able to pay people to build it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it seems to be like a couple examples to look at would be if this Diamond DAO thing goes through, and then like that's like kind of a lump sum for these services or these deliverables, then and if that's a model that we want to continue, then it just kind of, then JournoDAO becomes like this an agent on behalf of like the people doing the work or whatever, and might like take a percentage of this. Like if you find this gig through JournoDAO, then there's like a X fee that goes to the treasury, or like a job board. Like if somebody's paying like $75 to be on the job board, then like that money goes into the treasury. And then what happens with the treasury funds, like that's up for the DAO to decide, but there is going to be like revenue generated. So I mean, we already have 2,500, I guess. Well, what used to be 2,500.
And that project could go well enough that, we come up with some really, good content, and, the skills and means and experience to continue generating that sort of content, that, maybe that can become its own revenue source through, some sort of subscriptions or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, I'm pretty bullish on those things bringing in like enough revenue at some point to build the treasury up to where we could do something interesting, like actually incubate a project through funding. Whether or not we want to ask for something in return, I guess, just kind of comes down to the project itself. But I mean, it would be great if we could be a public goods funder or whatever, but we also do need to like amass some sort of a fund to do anything with. So I don't know.
How is everyone doing in general? I hear there's a bear market. Is that a thing?
I am trying to stay ahead of the ETH price to avoid getting liquidated, but I think I'm doing all right.
I got liquidated.
Oh,
Celsius.
Well, liquidated or just frozen?
Both.
Oh.
Anyway, yeah. Well, we live and we learn.
I'm going through this accelerator program, and there's 12 other teams in there, and I'm just like super, super thankful that like our project, like the success or failure is not dependent on the price of coins, because there's a lot of people in there that are like, like NFT auctions and stuff like that. They're like, I feel like tone deaf even pitching my products to people because like just how bad the market is. But yeah, thankfully we're not pegged to any sort of price.
Yeah, my plan is stay in academics long enough to ride out the bear market. Is looking like it might shake down, and I just got some scholarship due to cover tuition. So I'm like me and fiat, we're gonna be friends again. So then I'm hoping just like NFT and all the other things, like just stack the ETH until ETH is worth something again. So I'm kind of lucky to be a broke college student right now, you know, doesn't really matter. I'm already eating peanut butter, so it's all good.
Yeah, I told my wife her job is to mine fiat and my job is to waste it on crypto.
I mean, it's a good time to like build these foundations though, for sure, and like communities for sure.
Come on, Eric, dish it dirt. What's the biggest loss you've had?
So I was actually just looking up, you know, so what actually happened is when like everything was, you know, near its peak, I think when Bitcoin crossed like $60,000, I'm like, okay, time to pull most of this out. And then I got so busy with DAOs and stuff that I actually never put anything back in. So, so I mean, you know, there's losses because there was definitely stuff in Matic and ETH. But I was just looking and realizing that like you know, so I bought the tokens for Friends with Benefits like way back when it was like at one point it was like, you know, $9,000 to be able to, you know, pay for the Friends with Benefits membership. And I think looks like now that would be like $750. So I'm thinking like might be the time for that one. Same with Bankless, because I also liquidated my Bankless membership at one point. And you could buy back into that for nothing.
Yeah,
I'm really seeing where the efforts in my I joined a trading group about a year ago, and they're really good, just like normal people in Europe that aren't token shillers. But the stuff that they've been talking about and teaching for the past year, like I've just been absorbing it, and now to see it in action, it's like, oh, I think it's something that I know in the NFT space that I'm in the art space, that people don't pay attention at all to what the market is or how it works. So I think a lot of people got blindsided. And that if just even the very basic part, and this is probably something we should work into as we begin to educate journalists, just the basics of how this market actually works, as much as you can understand it on a basic level, is very valuable to learn, so that they don't lose their ass in the next, you know, rug pull or whatever. Stablecoin depegging, like that's terrifying.
What are your favorite information sources? You know, there's like Bankless podcast. I listen to that, and then there's like a handful, but like, I mean, when they start to get into like market fundamentals and really digging into the market side of it, like I don't tend to stick with it. Do you have any more engaging recommendations?
The two that I really like are Rekt Capital, REKT. His Substack's really good. And then they just changed their name. It's Metaverse Academy. I retweet every once in a while. It's I think it's like $60 to join, and that's a 3-month access. And it's really just a bunch of mostly fathers that have like families like around the US and in Europe. And they're just kind of doing the market, playing the market on the side, but they're also like, I'm their mindfulness leader, and I feel bad, like I haven't logged in a while to help. But they're also about like the whole person. So there's stuff about financial literacy, there's stuff about you know, mindfulness, there's stuff about diet, just how to like be a whole human and then also navigate markets. And they've been really accurate on the stuff that they talk about, like what to look for, how to trade in like not in a day trader capacity. Some of them do that, but most of them are doing swing trading, which is more of a longer, you know, a week-long trade, and then long holds. And they just have a ton of resources. And the guys that run it just like they'll jump on Discord, they'll do recordings and show you how to like read TradingView, like how to actually read a candle chart, and then how to look for the dips and, you know, things to look for, like knowing that this bear cycle is coming, how to prepare for that, and then how to recognize potential bottoms of the market. Like, of course, it can always go down, but here's how you logically look at it so that you're not emotionally making decisions. Because like I am the worst. Like I'll FOMO in at the top and then sell at the bottom all the time. I'm like, oh my God, I know better. I don't do it with a lot of money, just like tiny little amounts. But again, I'm like the Tina Fey of trading. So it's really good to have this resource to like log in and be like, oh no, I'm being an idiot right now. And like, here's the proof that I'm being an idiot. Here's the logical way to do this.
What's it called again?
Metaverse Academy. So it's just on Twitter. Let me see. And it's unfortunate. They rebranded right before Facebook made that rebrand themselves. It's like, oh. But just really good humans. Like I really dig them. There's sometimes some people will deviate into politics in there, and I'm like, I can't have this conversation right now. I gotta jump out for a week or so. But that's normal in any space. Let's see, where is it?
Oh yeah, the Metaverse Academy. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, I'm at the Metaverse AC. Just good humans. I dig them.
Cool.
Yeah. So, and they have a whole free section in there too. That's really useful. Yeah, so I'd highly recommend hopping in there.
All right. In the Discord. Yet another Discord.
Right? I'll holler at you in there.
Yeah, it was like the last I go to these conferences and I sit with people, and I'm like, this last one I went to, not Consensus, but the one before, I think it was Bitcoin, or permissionless or something. And all these like polka dot guys were telling me, take your money out. Polka dot's gonna last, but take your money out. And I was like, oh, they're just talking shit. And oh, sorry guys, I forgot recording. Yeah. So anyway, I should have. I mean, I started to, but yeah, they seem to know. They seem to know. Like you can hear the sentiment. It's just hard to believe it sometimes.
I think only after this stuff happens does it become clear who knew what they were talking about, but there's plenty of people who were not.
I mean, or they got lucky and that they happened to be right. I mean,
Well, that's what I
Exactly.
mean.
Exactly.
I bought my first crypto about 14 months ago, and I would relate this experience to like I'm like a running back running down the football field, and like that big Badger hack. I was in Badger. I just got lucky that I wasn't involved. The stuff with like, there's another universe where I put stuff into Terra, but I didn't. There's another universe where I put stuff into Celsius, but I didn't. Like it's a lot. But thankfully I'm kind of a boomer investor when it comes to crypto. I mostly just have Bitcoin and Ethereum. So I mean, I'm wrecked, but like,
So you're kind of like, you're on the best guy timeline. There's all these like timelines, guys like totally broke.
I mean, I'm still wrecked. I just didn't get hacked or like blocked from my funds or liquidated or anything. So it's, it's the best bad timeline, I guess. I am in ST ETH, so we'll see how that shakes out.
Well, all you have to do is hold, right? It's only you only lost.
So I hope so, man.
Yeah, I bought my first crypto in 2017 December, and so I think it was I bought a couple random coins that completely tanked, and then I bought Cardano on a recommendation from the guys that were teaching me this stuff, and then I forgot what exchange I bought it on for years. And then in December 2020, I think it was, I was like, oh, wait a minute, that coin's worth, I paid 7 cents for it. And it was up to like $1 something. I'm like, maybe we should figure out where that is. So then I realized I had a Binance account. I'm like, oh, that's where it is. But yeah, watching that happen, watching that collapse and how it hit everybody around, and the community was much smaller then. It was interesting to watch everyone go through that and see it again happen now. And know that, even though it was so crushing in 2018 and so many people lost so much, then to see it spike up again in 2020 the way it did in 2021, that it's just cyclical. So understanding those cycles, it's huge.
I've told this origin story before, but maybe not for everyone in this group, which was in 2012 or 2013, I bought 10 Bitcoin for an assignment. And the assignment was, can I do a road trip and figure out a way to pay for a road trip as much as possible using Bitcoin? And this is when like some businesses were like first starting to accept Bitcoin, and there was like a couple of Bitcoin ATMs around. And like I found somebody online was offering a Bitcoin debit card that was like through some super sketchy bank in Poland. And like in reality, it was just like, I think they were like manually like connecting your account to Bitcoin and like exchanging the Bitcoin for you and then putting it into this debit card account that was like a regular Visa credit card. Here's how sketchy it was, and I mean, I knew I was in trouble at this point. It was so sketchy that the guy emailed me my PIN for this card from his personal email. So needless to say, when that did turn out to be super scammy, I lost not too much. I lost most of it when I sold 9 of those Bitcoin because I was so excited because they went to like triple figures for the first time. And by the way, it was impossible to do the road trip. Like I wasn't really able to do it. And so nothing was ever even published. But that is my crypto origin story. And everything else that I've put in crypto since then is traceable back to the one Bitcoin that I did keep.
I looked into buying Bitcoin. It's 47 a coin. I think I've told this story before. And I'd found it on a blog somewhere. Some digital nomads that I followed were doing it. I'm like, well, that's interesting. So I had $100 bill and I'm like, well, maybe I should do this. And then it was like, send your cash in an envelope to this address in New York City, and then we'll send you these string of numbers. I was like, oh no, I could just feel my father coming out of the grave and like slapping me. He's like, no, that's dumb. And then like, now I'm like, oh, that might not have been a bad idea. But I'm sure I would have lost a piece of paper anyway. I gotta run. I'm gonna go. I promised Mom I would cook dinner before our 7 o'clock meeting, so I'm gonna go cook dinner for Mama Street.
Me as well. I'm gonna try to go outside before the Diamond DAO thing. So thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
All right, see
Thanks,
ya.
everybody. See ya.